What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted at Combat, back for another week of fights, and this is the one I've been dying to talk to you guys about. UFC 280, the big pay-per-view this weekend with two belts on the line. The vacant 155-pound strap with Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev finally taking place, and in the co-main event, the bantamweight strap on the line with former champion TJ Dillashaw challenging Aljamain Sterling. 14 fights scheduled right now as it stands. 7 of those fights have ranked fighters. This is a very stacked card, and a good betting card to make some money too. We'll try to find some spots. On this card, I'm going to be going over the fights very concisely and briefly, just to get through this without it being 2 hours long. However, on Wednesday, I'll have a longer form live stream with a very special guest, and the day after that, I'll have my entire full card betting slate released on that short form video. So hit that like, hit that subscribe, and let's break into this card. Kicking off the prelims, we have a women's bantamweight fight between Karol Rosa and Lena Lansberg. A big 13-year gap in age here. Karol Rosa is 27, Lena Lansberg is 40 years old. Although Lansberg will have a 2-inch height advantage, she will be giving up 2 inches of reach here. Karol Rosa is a sizable favorite already at minus 250 on the money line. Lansberg, the plus 210 underdog. So Karol Rosa came to the UFC, 4-0 streak, very impressive, looked promising, had 2 pretty easy opponents in Vanessa Melo and Laura Procopio, and 2 bigger tests with Jocelyn Edwards and Betch Correia. Now she's coming off of her first loss in the UFC to Sarah McMahon, who, that was another veteran test. I think she was 41 years old at the time, was Sarah McMahon, able to out-wrestle Karol Rosa in rounds 1 and rounds 2, smothering top pressure as she's known to do, and Karol Rosa got back into the fight in round 3, but it was too late. So Lena Lansberg, she's coming off of 2 back-to-back losses as well. One over Sarah McMahon herself she lost to, and had a long layoff, came back against Pani Kianzad this year, and lost another decision there pretty dominantly. So Lansberg is the former kickboxer. She's nicknamed the Elbow Queen for a reason. She likes to get in close, work the dirty boxing, grab up a single collar tie. Very good dirty boxing against the cage. Where she used to really dominate girls was in that clinch position on the cage. Now she can get bullied there as well. So it's going to have to be at least 2 out of 3 rounds for Lansberg, just being the bully against Karol Rosa, not giving her room to strike at distance. But I think her cardio is pretty lackluster at 40 years old now, and I think her durability is a little bit lacking as well. So Karol Rosa is a girl who's striking at over 6.5 significant strikes landed per minute over her 5 fights so far. And she started to employ takedowns in her arsenal as well, landing, I think, like 4 or 5 of them against Jocelyn Edwards, which, Edwards doesn't have great takedown defense, but it was cool to see that wrinkle of Karol Rosa's game being shown. So able to outstrike all of her opponents so far, aside from Sarah McMahon. I think she gets back in the winning track here pretty easily. I think even a finish is live for Rosa, but I think that would have to be fairly early in the fight when she has the cardio to do it. If Karol Rosa could wrestle early and often, get Lansberg to the ground, advance to mount, I think she could win by ground and pound here. But Lena Lansberg still has some good weapons up her sleeve up close. A very nice, vicious right hook over the top, and she still has those elbows that she's known for. So Karol Rosa can't get caught lacking up close. She's got to stay defensively sound, but I'm pretty confident Rosa gets the job here. We'll just call it by decision, but like I said, I think that that ground and pound finish would be a path to victory for her, and Lansberg has been finished by strikes a couple of times. Give me Karol Rosa here. Not a lot of extra value on this money line. Up next at flyweight, we have the biggest betting favorite of the entire card, Muhammad Mokaev, at minus 725, currently on the money line, taking on Malcolm Gordon, the plus 525, huge underdog. And Gordon has more professional experience at 32 years old. He's got more UFC experience and still a huge underdog here. We will get into why. Muhammad Mokaev is the 22-year-old prospect. Both guys are 5'7" and very similar reach here. So aside from that decade of youth for Mokaev, tail of the tape very similar. Mokaev is undefeated, 8-0 and 1 no contest, over 20-0 as an amateur throughout his teenage years. And he just shows very good pace and pressure. I mean, he had the best debut back in March in front of his home crowd in London, as you could possibly have against Cody Durden. 60 seconds in, feints his way in range, gets a flying knee, and then snatches up a guillotine for the submission in round 1. And, followed that up with a matchup over Charles Johnson, the former LFA champion, a much bigger man, and a dangerous guy in Charles Johnson. But, of course, Mokaev able to land over 12 takedowns. I think he attempted about 20 or so. Relentless pace, relentless pressure, and solid striking to get in range as well. So He's got the speed, he's got the striking, he seems to have power and explosivity. Malcolm Gordon, unfortunately, Malcolm Gordon's strength is the BJJ, which he does have slick submissions. A lot of them are arm bars off of his back. He has a very active guard, all pre-UFC. But that's going to really fit into the game plan of Mokaev, who's got good submission as well, smothering top pressure. And I think that Gordon's jiu-jitsu is going to be nullified here. And, the cardio of Gordon's not great. The durability has been cracked 4 times. He's been knocked out as a pro. 16 of 19 fights for Malcolm Gordon have finished inside the distance. I think this one probably does as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take Muhammad Mokaev by, either KO or submission. It's hard to choose between those because, like you saw in Mokaev's debut, he can, land with the flying knee, snatch up the, the guillotine there. So you never know if it's going to be a club and sub. But I think this could stay striking, and Mokaev would get the better of Gordon here. So I'd probably look for Mokaev inside the distance if you were to bet this fight. That might even still be quite a big of a price because, we've got minus 725 on his money line. For a prop like that with a young guy here, I probably wouldn't want to pay money to, win less. But, yeah, Mokaev inside the distance is definitely the pick. Malcolm Gordon does have slick submissions. He's got an active guard, arm bars off of his back. He can transition from the arm bars to, go for the Kimura and then establish dominant position from there if his opponents don't tap. But I just don't think that the, Malcolm Gordon's chin's going to hold up here. I don't think that his jiu-jitsu is going to be working off of his back like it has against lower-level competition back in Canada. So, yeah, give me Mokaev pretty confidently here. Not sure what I can do with this money line betting-wise, though. Okay, a very fun stylistic matchup between two violent finishers in Armen Petrosyan and AJ Dobson at middleweight. Petrosyan is the moderate favorite at minus 205. I think money's coming in on the Petrosyan side, and AJ Dobson is the plus 175 underdog here. So both guys are kind of new to the UFC. Petrosyan has gone 1-1 in the organization so far. AJ Dobson 0-1, just dropping his debut this year to Jacob Malkoun. And they both have been matched up with guys in their past fights here who have controlled them, stopped them from doing what they want to do, which is just swing wildly in round 1 and end the fight there. I'd say Petrosyan is the more technical guy. He's got very nice body kicks, which I've seen him end a couple of fights with before the UFC. And Petrosyan does have good dirty boxing. He can tie up in the clinch very well and use knees. And he's just got a nice crisp 1-2 that goes straight down to the target. That might not matter against AJ Dobson, who's one of these fighters who just has that death touch, and he knows it. Whenever his fists land on his opponent's chin, they tend to go down if you watch his regional scene footage. But sometimes he knows it too much, and he throws wildly to get to the target as fast as possible. He can get himself out of position and tire himself out. So a dangerous fight for both guys here. And, Malkoun, Jacob Malkoun was able to beat AJ Dobson in his debut. AJ Dobson just couldn't handle getting taken down, single-legged over and over again, and eventually his gas tank wore out, and he was unable to put Malkoun away. Petrosyan, in his last fight against Caio Borralho, very much of the same. He was taken down and controlled by a much better grappler. So this is going to be a spot for both guys to shine here and get a nice highlight reel knockout. They've matched up Petrosyan with a couple of very tough guys in Gregory Rodriguez, which he managed to get a split decision win, although it was close, and Caio Borralho. Now this is going to be the chance for Petrosyan to potentially, step into the spotlight here and shine. I think he's going to get it done. He has better proven cardio going the 3 rounds with both Borralho and actually winning against Rodriguez with almost doubling him up on significant strikes and finishing strong in that fight. And he showed very good durability, eating some major shots from Rodriguez in that bout and, living to see the judges' scorecards there. Dobson looks like he has more of a short fuse. He got very, very tired defending the wrestling of Malkoun, but you got to give it to Malkoun. The guy's been looking pretty good, and a lot of guys can't deal with that kind of wrestling. So the fight doesn't go to decision. The under 1.5. Fight ends in KO. I think those are all live props here. Anything to not choose a side. If you had to, I would say Petrosyan, I think, is the more complete guy, but it's going to be dangerous, and either guy could land first here. So give me Armen Petrosyan to get the round 1 knockout, or maybe even early round 2 knockout, but I got to say, I think AJ Dobson is more of a live dog than his money line would indicate. Up next at 170 pounds, we've got one of the Nurmagomedov cousins. We've got Abubakar Nurmagomedov. You've got Umar Usman and Khabib, and now you've got Abubakar Nurmagomedov at 170 in the UFC, taking on Omargadzhiev. So a couple of Russians going at it. I believe Omargadzhiev is like from Moscow, and of course Abubakar is from Dagestan, Russia. Part of the crew that Abdulmanap, Khabib's dad, did have under his wing. And, minus 180 right now on Abubakar Nurmagomedov, plus 150 on Omargadzhiev. These names are just crazy, aren't they? They're like tongue twisters. Omargadzhiev is 13-1. He came off of the win on the Contender Series by round 1 submission, knee-barring Janzi Silva, who had a padded record. But Gadzi sort of has a padded record as well. He went in there now against Caio Borralho back in April, I believe, and completely outclassed, completely dominated, lost that technical decision just because there was a couple of illegal blow shenanigans going on, but he was getting destroyed. Omargadzhiev just does not have great striking. He, overextends on everything, doesn't seem to have a good gas tank or good accuracy or form, so he'll feint in range for that big overhand right, try to close distance. His takedown defense is not that great. He can get transitioned on the ground the way Borralho was able to transition on him, and he overswings like a wild man. If he gets, a little impatient, he can swing himself literally off of his feet. He'll miss so badly, so... I'm not quite sure where Omargadzhiev is. He's somewhere in between a Janzi Silva and a Caio Borralho, but that leaves a big spectrum of a skill gap there to determine where he's at. We'll find that out against Abubakar Nurmagomedov, who was undefeated in World Series of Fighting, also had a pretty lackluster PFL run in 2018 where he got club and subbed, and then he had some sort of hand injury later on in the tournament as well. So he can get clipped, he can get hurt. Omargadzhiev could do it, but I just don't see it happening at a high clip. I think overall still Nurmagomedov is a guy who can, be kind of patient, slow in the feet, but just draw you in, with that forward plotting pressure, get you to extend. He'll counter or shoot the takedown, and it usually wins the fight. So the only time it didn't win so far in the UFC was he was working comfortably in the full guard of David Sawada. He got triangled. Kind of just a slip up there. It happens. It was a slick maneuver. But it worked most recently on Jared Gordon, this strategy of outstriking Jared Gordon and very patiently in rounds 1 and 2, and then working the takedown and controlling him all of round 3. So I just think the skills are more polished for Nurmagomedov here. Omargadzhiev, I really just don't think he's that great, as his record would suggest at 13-1. So give me Nurmagomedov pretty confidently at that minus 180 price tag. I think that's still got some value left on it. Okay, up next at lightweight, we've got the second biggest betting favorite on the card, I believe, and probably the weirdest fight of the night. Magomed Mustafaev returns as a minus 550 favorite currently over Yamato Nishikawa, who is a Japanese debutant who is 19 years old, with a 21-3-6 record for Nishikawa. That's right, 21 wins, 3 losses, 6 draws. So how is that possible? How is it possible he has 6 draws? And more than that, how is it possible he's got like over 30 professional fights at 19? He started fighting at like 13 or 14 years old as a professional. You can go back and watch a lot of those fights. And the 6 draws come from early on in his teenage years. It was 2 rounds. So he could win 1, lose 1, and get the draw. It happened 6 times. So 14 knockouts, 4 submissions, 3-1 in decisions for Nishikawa. The guy's very easy to hit on the feet. He's been knocked out. I saw him at like 15 years old getting knocked out cold by 20-year-olds. So at least it's pretty hardcore. He is about this fight life. He does like to take risks. I've even seen him, in the past year. I think a year ago I saw a fight where he, right off the bat in the first minute, he attempted a flying scissor heel hook on a guy and just got punched in the face on the ground instead. So I don't see very much upside to this. I know this kid is filling in for Jamie Malarkey on short notice, I believe. Mustafaev is not that great either. He's been in the UFC since 2015. Only gone 3-2 in the UFC so far. He's got a lot of hiatuses. He had some sort of arm injury after 2015 when Kevin Lee beat him. Now he's coming off that split decision loss to Brad Riddell back in early 2020. So very inactive. At his worst, he's getting choked out cold by Kevin Lee back in the day. At his best, he's getting a spinning back kick highlight reel knockout over Rafael Fiziev. So I don't know quite where this guy is at skill-wise. It's been a long time away from the cage. Nishikawa is just not that good. He's a flat-footed, very slow plotting striker at this point. Hittable. His groundwork is, basic at at best, and he's fighting a bunch of bums. So I think Mustafaev should get this job done by knockout. Mustafaev is not one of these Dagestani guys, I don't believe. He's more of a knockout fighter than he is a wrestler, but he can pull out the wrestling if he needs to. So against this low-level opponent who's a 19-year-old kid out of nowhere, give me Mustafaev pretty confidently, like a round one knockout here. Up next, we've got Tukhugov taking on Lucas Almeida. At 145, we have Tukhugov, who is the minus 150 favorite. Lucas Almeida, the Brazilian, can be had at plus 130. And, that's a pretty tight money line considering Tukhugov has been in the UFC since 2014. But in those 8.5 years, Tukhugov has only fought 8 times. So part of that is due to a 2-year-long suspension due to a drug called Ostarine, which is a very crappy, very ineffective oral steroid. I'm not sure why that warrants a 2-year suspension, but he got caught with it, and he also had some time suspended for that altercation in 2018 with Khabib and Connor's team. So it's been a while since he's fought in the UFC, even since the last time we saw him last October, right? It's been a whole year, where he got a unanimous decision over Ricardo Ramos, a very respectable win because he won rounds 2 and rounds 3 after getting hurt in round 1. And he used accuracy, pace, pressure, good cardio, and he actually set a record. I think it was like 77 significant strikes he landed in that 3-round fight. So very good for Tukhugov. He does have wrestling to bail himself out of bad situations. Overall, I'm not in love with the style of Tukhugov. He can be a little bit wild with his striking sometimes, especially if he gets aggressive and tries to end the fight. He can swing himself out of position, and somebody with a very tight jab and just willing to trade in the pocket with him could really give him trouble here. That guy could be Lucas Almeida, who's live for a knockout, but Almeida kind of swings wildly at times as well. So Lucas Almeida, 5'11", is the Brazilian for this weight class. He is 31 years old, just like Tukhugov, with a 14-1 record. That one loss was on the Contender Series a year ago to Daniel Zellhuber, who took him to a very close decision loss. So since then, Almeida, kind of made up for that loss. He came back against Mike Trizano, possibly on short notice even, earlier this year in June. Knocked him down in round 2 and round 3 for the finish in round 3 after getting hurt himself and dropped in round 1, did Almeida. So he is hittable. He is probably not the best durability, but he was able to recover fast from that. He's got a nice jab cross, nice and straight down the middle. Finds its mark. It's pretty unpredictable, and he peppers in leg kicks as well. So this is a spot where I really do think Lucas Almeida is live for that, puncher's chance finish. But if there's a decision result, I think it goes to Tukhugov. And Tukhugov could even, get the finish later in this fight. I think he's got the better cardio and, just a tougher guy in general. So proven cardio, proven wrestling, UFC experience. I think a lot of this goes in the favor of Tukhugov here, who will break Almeida down the stretch or even possibly early. So I think any way of victory is possible for Tukhugov here, most likely by knockout. He's not much of a submission fighter. At minus 150 for this price tag, I think that's pretty good for all the proven evidence we have for Tukhugov's ability here. Up next at light heavyweight, we've got a battle between Volkan Oezdemir and Nikita Krylov, who are ranked 8 and 10 in the division, respectively. And, they're kind of in similar situations in the league so far. 11 UFC fights for Oezdemir, the Swiss kickboxer. He is 6 and 5 in the organization. Nikita Krylov, who is more of a submission-based fighter, 16 UFC fights over 2 different stints in the organization. He's got 9 and 7. So, kind of win-loss for these guys. They're able to beat guys that don't belong in the league or will never challenge for a title. And they lose to the guys that do belong in the top 5 of the division and will challenge for a belt. Likewise, Oezdemir had that situation 4 years ago. He challenged DC for the belt and lost by one of his only 2 TKO losses. The other was to Yuri Prohaska later. So he's a kickboxer. He's got very solid striking, good power with 12 knockouts on his record and 1 submission. He's never been finished by submission, but he has lost by knockout twice, as I mentioned. Nikita Krylov is a guy with 15 submissions, 12 knockout wins. His finish stats are crazy because he's lost by submission 6 times himself and has been knocked out once. So whenever there's a Nikita Krylov fight, you want to think about the finish stats or the fight does not go, because he only has 3 decision results out of 37 professional fights. Pretty insane stat there. And he added to that most recently this year with a 1-minute victory by knockout over the returning Alexander Gustafsson. Volkan Oezdemir coming off of a victory this year as well over Paul Craig by decision. All he had to do was outlast Paul Craig's relentless takedown threats, submission threats, just not fall into his guard, which is what Nikita Krylov did and lost to Paul Craig by triangle. But I think this fight will take place largely on the feet because of the inability for Krylov to get the fight to the mat where he likes it, and the very good takedown defense of Volkan Oezdemir. Oddly enough, as a kickboxer, he's managed to maintain 86% takedown defense over 11 UFC fights so far. And if you want to look at his recent fights here, the one against Paul Craig I mentioned, 0 for 15 on takedown attempts from Paul Craig. Ankalaev, who's probably a future champion at the weight class, 1 for 4 on takedowns last year. And Alexander Rakic, just before that, 1 for 9 on takedowns over Volkan Oezdemir. So pretty durable, pretty difficult to take down, oddly enough, and he's got power in his hands. So with a Krylov fight that might finish inside the distance, I'd take Oezdemir to win this fight by knockout or decision here. Either way, he is the underdog in this fight, oddly enough, at like plus 145 odds. So give me Volkan Oezdemir here. I'm not sure where the money is coming in, if it's going to increase in the underdog price or if I should grab it now. I have not bet this one yet. But yeah, again, the other hedge bet here is the fight doesn't go to decision. Just in case Krylov does find himself in a dominant position, he could potentially end the fight as well. But I'm taking the dog here at 205. Give me Oezdemir for the upset. Up next at middleweight, we've got two prospects that are pretty much in their prime at middleweight. Makhchev Muradov taking on Caio Borralho. Makhchev Muradov has been off for a little over a year after that round 2 submission loss to Gerald Meerschaert, where Muradov was a sizable favorite and got upset that night. Caio Borralho, quite the contrary, came off of 2 back-to-back wins on the Dana White Contender Series, and now this will be his 3rd UFC fight already. All of those 5 fights have been within 13 months' time. So Caio Borralho is 12-1 record, never been finished. He's on quite a win streak, 4 knockouts, 3 submission wins, 5-1 in decisions. So Makhchev Muradov is more of a one-dimensional kind of finisher. 17 knockouts over his 25 wins for the, I believe he's Uzbekistan, but he has been subbed 4 times in his career, 4 times within those 7 losses. So Muradov is, that's his glaring weakness. He is very dangerous for any fighter early. Combat sambo and a kickboxing background for Muradov. He's got huge explosive looping strikes, loves to throw hooks, loves to throw, big overhand rights that close the distance very quickly. And he uses explosive movement, spinning attacks, and usually a jumping knee as well. A lot of those things are going to open up the takedown offense from Caio Borralho, who boasts an 80% takedown accuracy over those 4 fights I mentioned so far. So he's got a nasty body lock. If he gets the back, he's got a nice body triangle. Caio Borralho is usually able to float on top, very good balance, and his opponents can't shake him off. He's either going to control that round on the ground or sync up a submission, and I think he does that here. So Borralho is a minus 200 favorite and climbing. Muradov can be ahead as an underdog for anywhere from plus 175 to plus 185 at this point. I think that there's some value on Borralho here. I really do think he's able to stand with Muradov. He's, kind of been facing the test of some of these explosive guys like Omargadzhiev, Armen Petrosyan, and he's passed these tests, able to, capitalize on their mistakes in the feet and then just eventually take them down and get the control time. But in this fight, I think he finishes Muradov and, wears him out on the ground. And I'm going to predict a round 2 submission for Caio Borralho here. Okay, the last fight on the prelims is at welterweight between 2 ranked guys, Belal Muhammad at number 5 and Sean Brady, who is now at number 8. Brady is the minus 145 favorite here, plus 125 can be had for Belal Muhammad. I'm not quite sure which way the money is coming in on the market right now, but 15-0 is the reason why the minus 145 favorite price tag is attached to Sean Brady. He's undefeated so far with, half of those being due to finish, 3 knockouts, 4 submissions. The other 8 were decision results. He is the CFFC welterweight champion, the former welterweight champion. Now he's 5-0 in the UFC. He's going to be the shorter man by an inch, but the same reach and 5 years younger. So Belal Muhammad, very long UFC career so far. 16 UFC fights. He's gone 12-3 and 1 no contest in those. That 1 no contest was recently, like a year and a half ago, to Leon Edwards, the current champion. Inadvertent eye poke, made a no contest there. So a very Neil Magny-esque record at the weight class. 16-2 is the decision record for Belal Muhammad. So he's not finishing fights, 11 of his 12 wins have gone to decision for Muhammad. 18 of his 25 fights in general have gone to decision. And over all of these fights, he's averaged 91% takedown defense and a positive striking differential. So he's very good at not getting finished as well. Only been finished by Vicente Luque, a man who has a very impressive run in the UFC himself. And Belal avenged his loss over him earlier this year in April. He was able to secure 1 takedown per round, level change effectively, and get 7.5 minutes of control time, the better strikes, and win that decision. So, minute winning is something that Belal Muhammad has been good at in a large variety of situations, whether it's against Vicente Luque, who's an explosive finisher, Stephen Thompson, who's a very good minute winner on the feet with that karate in and out movement, or even Damian Maia. He was able to use this strategy on, outpoint him, win all the minutes in that fight against the guy who was looking for the BJJ as well. So Sean Brady is a high-level BJJ practitioner, good back takes, a very strong individual, but his striking output does not really... it's not really shown that often. He usually does a lot of feints, gets in range, loves to take the center of the cage, which Belal Muhammad will gladly let him do, I think. But Sean Brady's a guy who I think is going to get flustered by this weird style of Muhammad. Muhammad will circle left, circle right on the cage, and then dart in the middle with counter striking, and time his double leg very, very well. So I got to go with the experience of Belal Muhammad in this one. I just think I've seen him employ a similar game plan to what Sean Brady would want to employ. He's just done it more effectively at the UFC level. So I'm surprised this money line is the way it is. I think it should be the favorite. Should go to Belal Muhammad here, whether you like his style of fighting or not. I think it's effective. So of course, if you're going to play Belal, you might as well just wait for the decision prop to drop and play him by decision. But I also do like the overs in this fight, as Belal has been very, hard to put away. So give me the underdog and Belal Muhammad to get, once again, a boring decision here. Okay, looks like this will kick off the pay-per-view main card. We've got Manon Fiorot at flyweight taking on Caitlin Chookagian. Two of the best women in the division not to be the champion, in my opinion. We've got the newcomer Fiorot with only a handful of UFC fights, quickly turning heads, quickly making a statement in the division, and to get anywhere in the division, you've got to beat Caitlin Chookagian, who is 18-4, 15 UFC fights where she's gone 11-4. In those, 15-2 decision victories over her career. Caitlin Chookagian's game. She cashes as a money machine in the betting world as far as just betting Chookagian by decision. She never finishes anybody. She'll just kind of stay at range, use her size and reach to jab your face off, counter you if you come in too close. Hopefully she can defend takedowns for 2 out of 3 rounds. And you can just bet Chookagian by decision. It works time and time again. It might be time to abandon that strategy here because Manon Fiorot is very good. She is already the minus 176 favorite, moving towards minus 200 here. Chookagian could be ahead at plus 160, which is wild considering all of the experience Chookagian has, even unsuccessfully challenging for the belt and getting finished in that result. She might get finished again here. It's kind of live, Fiorot is, a French kickboxer, southpaw striker with a 9-1 record. 6 of her 9 victories are have been finished inside the distance by strikes. So her kicks are very accurate. A nice lead leg side kick to the leg and to the body. She maintains distance with that well. She's got very good accurate striking. And unlike Chookagian, who can get caught just maintaining distance with 1 strike at a time, Fiorot is often striking in combination, and I think those strikes will add up here in her benefit. She is landing 6.6 significant strikes per minute at this point over her 4 fights. So that's decent. It still is only over 4 fights, but she's landed takedowns in all 4 of her opponents now as well. So that's where Caitlin Chookagian struggles. Fiorot seems technical enough with the takedowns to make that happen on Chookagian. Maybe she'll face some resistance, but I think eventually as Chookagian tires, or Fiorot just lands something big on her chin and then goes for the takedown. I think that's the path to victory. So if this stayed striking, I would favor Fiorot, but especially since she's got that wrestling in her back pocket, I like her chances here as well. So more sting on her punches, more visually appealing for the judges as far as damage goes, and I think she's going to win minutes in this fight. So give me Fiorot on the money line. I think I would play that up to I'd probably play that up to -200. I'm not sure if I would play that past that point. Chookagian is still the GOAT as far as women's flyweight decision victories goes, but give me the French woman in this fight. Up next, a very fun fight at lightweight. We've got Mateusz Gamrot taking on the UFC-credentialed Beneil Dariush. Gamrot is the former KSW lightweight and featherweight champion. He's the -185 favorite here with a 21-1 no contest record. That one loss was in his debut in the UFC against Guram Tutataladze in a very controversial split decision loss. So he could very well be undefeated here, coming off of that awesome 5-round decision victory, 3 rounds to 2 over Arman Tsarukyan very recently. So Dariush, I say he's the more UFC-credentialed guy. He's got way more fights, been in the league for a while now. He is 21-4-1 draw with all 4 losses coming at the UFC level. And pretty equal opportunist with the way he wins fights. 5 knockouts, 8 subs, and 8-0 in decisions. Of course, Dariush is a jiu-jitsu fighter primarily with a world championship level BJJ game. Same with Mateusz Gamrot, though, a champion in Europe in submission wrestling. Both guys are BJJ black belts, with Dariush being on a 7-fight win streak here. But you got to say, some of his more impressive wins in the UFC were by strikes, right? He had that nice comeback victory over Drakkar Klose, where he was in all sorts of trouble in round 2. Comes back with some wild strikes and, pieces up Drakkar Klose until he's lifeless on the canvas. So Dariush has kind of got a slow plotting style. Of course he wants to swing wildly to get into range, possibly clinch up and take you to the mat where he works his submissions, but he's a southpaw striker. He's got, some big overhand lefts, big looping left hooks, and even scoops a very long left uppercut as well. Sometimes uses all 3 of those in sequence, and you don't know which is coming from where. So you give the BJJ advantage to Dariush, give the UFC experience to him as well. You got to give the durability to Gamrot, who's never been finished, submitted or knocked out, where I've seen Dariush knocked out a myriad of times, usually to explosive, fast guys like Mateusz Gamrot. So I'm taking Gamrot here as the favorite. I think his speed is going to kill Dariush in this fight. Whether he gets a finish or not, I think it's going to be the difference. And that speed translates not only to the striking realm, but to the ground as well. He's got very good takedown defense, good scramble ability, and he can really change the tides of a grappling match, can Gamrot, just by challenging submissions of his own or just using that explosive movement to stay out of harm's way and get his shoulders off of the mat. So I think the reversals and speed will be key here for Gamrot's success. And I think he's got a pretty good chance of finishing this fight inside the distance by strikes if it goes that way on the feet. So give me Mateusz Gamrot. I think that -185 money line is still pretty generous here. Okay, up next at bantamweight, we've got a huge disparity in rankings here. Sean O'Malley, the underdog at +250 and number 12 in the division at bantamweight, taking on Peter Yan, number 1 in the division, the former champion, the -300 favorite here. So Peter Yan has got a 16-3 record. 2 of those are losses to the current champion, Aljamain Sterling. 1 split decision loss earlier this year, and the 1 DQ in a fight Yan was winning. And the other loss was, long before the UFC. So this guy is 8-2 in decisions. He's got 7 knockouts, 1 submission. Very good array of skills, very good technical boxing, and good defense especially as well, does Peter Yan have. And he finds his way to really break opponents with his pace and pressure in his fights. Again, just as the shorter man here, 5'11" for Sean O'Malley, 5'7.5" for Peter Yan. Yan's going to have to stalk down Sean O'Malley, crowd him, don't allow him to get distance going, and really start this early. Once Sean O'Malley's game gets going and he's confident in his sniping from the outside, it's pretty much danger for whoever he fights. So this is going to have to be a spot where you're going to have to crowd Sean O'Malley, and I think that means getting into clinch range for Peter Yan, pressuring him against the cage and giving him nowhere to go and sprawl. So I'm expecting a lot of the footwork combinations and feints that we've seen from Sean O'Malley, trying to maintain distance with that long reach, working the jab from each side. But this is something Peter Yan's seen before. He faced and dominantly beat Corey Sandhagen last year in Abu Dhabi, in a 5-round fight. He was able to hurt him, knock him down in a couple of spots there, and really secure that fight without even using the wrestling. So I think he can mirror that game plan against Sean O'Malley, and O'Malley has not had the pleasure of seeing somebody like Peter Yan before. Nobody's had that kind of wrestling to challenge O'Malley in their back pocket. O'Malley has never fought anybody in the UFC besides Jose Quinones that has averaged more than a half of a takedown per 15 minutes. So nobody going for takedowns that accurately or often or effectively has fought Sean O'Malley so far. I think that's going to be a big surprise and a big advantage for Petr Yan here. So you've got the 5-round experience for Petr Yan, the cardio and that pace and pressure. I'd say the close-range boxing and defense. I'll give, of course, the size and reach and, the kickboxing, the footwork for Sean O'Malley here, but and even the BJJ we've seen does not give enough dangerous threat to, stop Petr Yan from going for the takedowns. Sean O'Malley does throw up triangles. He does throw up guillotines at times, but we rarely see it, and I don't think it's going to be that dangerous to Petr Yan. So either way you split this, if you think the money line should be closer or not, I think this fight does go to decision more often than not. I think it does go over that 2.5 round mark, which is set at -200. I think that's a pretty safe bet. And if you're on the O'Malley side, I would take him by decision because I don't think he finishes Petr Yan. If anybody finishes this fight, I think it is Petr Yan, but I'm going to call Yan by decision to get this done in at least 2 out of 3 rounds, if not a 30-27 victory. Okay, up next, the co-main event, we've got the Bantamweight Championship defended by Aljamain Sterling, the current champion, who is the -175 favorite, taking on the challenger TJ Dillashaw at +150. He is once again the underdog in a championship fight. He is a former 2-time champion at the weight class. 36 years old now for TJ Dillashaw. He will be the shorter man by an inch at 5'6", and he'll be lacking 4 inches of reach in the favor of that 71-inch of Aljamain Sterling. I think these guys size up pretty well. TJ Dillashaw probably the thicker, more muscular individual, with Sterling being just a little bit longer limbs with that reach. So both guys have very good records in the UFC so far. And just overall as pros, you got 17-4 for TJ Dillashaw, 21-3 for Sterling here. And, it's a very good matchup between two guys who like to be on the mat. Sterling, very high-level BJJ practitioner. He's got 8 submissions on his record. And the guy's got very good scramble ability. We just saw that in his first title defense, that split decision win over Petr Yan. As a big underdog earlier this year, he was able to, stay at range, defend a lot of the takedowns of Petr Yan, and ultimately get the better of the mistakes of Petr Yan. Take the back of Yan and just hold position, looking for chokes and things like that. But it was mostly stalemated with Sterling in the dominant position on the mat for many of those rounds. So TJ Dillashaw is a guy who, D1 college wrestler, very good, accurate takedowns. He's always averaging a ton of takedowns in his fights and very good takedown defense as well. His clinch work is strong. I think he's just going to be the stronger individual here in general. And he's got heavy hands with 8 knockouts. So, of course, it was a knockout that won him the belt both of the times he did. And he's active on the ground, too. He doesn't just get the takedowns and maintain position. He mounts up for ground and pound, postures up, and tries to end the fight. And it's going to be a lot of minutes being won by TJ Dillashaw, in my opinion. And I think it's going to be Dillashaw at the beginning of each round that takes the center of the cage. Sterling is usually content to play the outside, feint at distance, try to get reactions from his opponents, and eventually either go for the takedown himself or counter-strike for Aljamain Sterling. So I think TJ Dillashaw is going to be in a very good position here in this fight. I think this fight, works for his style well, and I think he's going to win off of knockdowns from finding the chin on Sterling. A lot of the clinch control time, I think, will be in the favor of Dillashaw, who uses nice knees to the legs and body in that position. And I think the takedowns will be there for him. Sterling is a guy who likes to use a lot of knees in his game, a lot of kicks with that lead leg in his game, and I think all of those maneuvers could, they are certainly a danger to Dillashaw, but more often than not, they can be caught and give Dillashaw that takedown entry he needs. So I think at least 3 out of 5 rounds here are going to go to Dillashaw. I think he's going to win minutes, and it might be a close fight, but I think it's going to be a third time that we see Dillashaw with the belt, even at 36 years old. He looks pretty decent against Corey Sandhagen last summer. Whether you think he won that fight or not based off of the damage done by Sandhagen and the control time of Dillashaw, it showed that Dillashaw can win minutes and put up a pace. So the jury is still out on the cardio of Aljamain Sterling, in my opinion. He didn't look great in that 5-round fight against Yan the first time, but he looked okay this year in that 5-round fight against Yan, but he wasn't really that active, right? He could hold position, grab the back, and just ride out the round looking for the chokes. But he's going to have his hands full with TJ Dillashaw here, who is known to push a high pace. So give me the experience, the power, the takedown accuracy, and defense for Dillashaw here. And yeah, I'm gonna say that gets the victory over the current momentum, the youth, the reach, and the slick BJJ of Sterling. I think it's going to be enough. Give me the dog in this one by decision. Okay, we've made it all the way to the main event of the pay-per-view. Charles Oliveira taking on Islam Makhachev for the vacant lightweight championship. Plus 160 underdog price on Charles Oliveira. Islam Makhachev, the minus 185 favorite. The over-under is interesting as well. The over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over at plus 130. The under at minus 165. Which means that whoever wins this fight, the bookies predict they'll do it earlier rather than later. And we won't see that halfway mark of the fight. So Charles Oliveira, 33 years old. He will be on fight night. 2 years older than Islam Makhachev. They're the same height with 3.5 inches of reach in the favor of Charles Oliveira, the former champion, who did not lose his belt to anybody. He missed weight and was stripped of the belt in May and then destroyed Justin Gaethje in one round by submission. So Charles Oliveira, 33-8-1 no contest. Out of all of those fights, over 42 professional fights, only 4 have actually gone to decision, so he's a huge finisher. 16 submissions, which is the record in the UFC. 19 finishes, the record in the UFC. He's the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter to ever do it in the octagon. Very effective. He does absorb a lot of punishment, though, especially recently. I think he's been, either wobbled or knocked down in all 3 of his last 3 fights. So he wants the fight to go to the ground. He can be a little bit reckless on the feet, can Oliveira, because what's the worst that happens? He gets knocked down. His opponents have to follow him there, and he can usually reverse position or lock up a limb and get the submission. He's got the experience in this fight. Of course, I think he does have the technical striking in this fight, and he does have the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in this fight as well. Makhachev, who is 22-1, he's only been knocked out one time. That was in his second UFC fight. He got hit by, I think, a massive left hook of Adriano Martins, who was just able to catch Makhachev a little bit over-enthusiastic at 23 years old. Makhachev's now 31. He's the combat sambo master of sport, just like a lot of those Nurmagomedov guys are in that training camp. And he's a very patient striker, I gotta say. I mean, he's got tight boxing. He wants to pressure forward, feint forward, and get his opponent back against the cage where they have no room to sprawl. So he can shoot in for the double leg or the single leg and easily get the takedown. So both of these guys, this is a new matchup for Oliveira, in where Makhachev wants this fight to hit the mat as much as Oliveira wants to. So Makhachev's going to have to stay very tight chest-to-chest pressure and not give Oliveira room to work or reverse position or lock up a submission. And, Makhachev has been pretty good at that so far. Not fought a lot of really high-level BJJ guys, but he was able to pass the test against Thiago Moises, although there were a couple of red flags. Makhachev giving up his back pretty confidently. His back did get taken in that fight. He was able to shake off Thiago Moises, but I don't think that's going to happen against Oliveira. Once Oliveira gets in a dominant position, he might just stay locked there and end the fight. So my prediction for this fight is going to be a fast start for these guys early. Both want to take the center of the cage, but I think it'll be, end up on the mat and be a stalemate for at least a couple of rounds. And at that point, I think the real work will begin. We'll see who's got the better cardio, which is still on the table. I'm not sure who really does here, since both guys have not been to a 5th round. Oliveira wants to be on the mat, especially when he gets tired. He really just wants to flop to his back, pull guard, jump on your back off the cage, and get that standing back mount. Islam Makhachev is going to be very dominant on these mat positions. He's going to be winning the minutes. And that's one knock on Oliveira, you have to admit. Even though he's been winning, he largely is losing until he does win in a lot of these fights. Maybe you can forgive the Justin Gaethje fight most recently. Oliveira was in the driver's seat for a lot of that fight, but he did get cracked a couple of times. And, that happened against Poirier. He got knocked down twice. That happened against Chandler. He did get knocked down and almost finished in round 1. So I don't like that about Oliveira against Makhachev. You don't want to be losing the fight until against Makhachev, who's got a relentless pace and pressure and, just seems to be very tight with all of his skill sets. So I've been riding the Oliveira money train since Kevin Lee in early 2020. Cashed on him against Kevin Lee, against Ferguson, cashed with Oliveira against Chandler as an underdog, Poirier as an underdog. A slight favorite on Gaethje earlier in May. I'm finally going to hop off of the Charles Oliveira money train here. I do think he is very live to get this victory. I think he, as a plus 160 underdog, has a lot of value as the former champion. And if you're going to take Oliveira, you might as well take him to win by finish, because I don't think there's any way in hell he's going to win a decision over Islam Makhachev, most likely. But I'm going to pick Islam Makhachev as a pick here. So I'm probably going to not be on a moneyline side, but I can't look past that one blemish on Oliveira, which is his striking defense. You know, Islam Makhachev does have some pretty tight boxing, a nice big overhand left, which I think will find its mark on Oliveira. And you never want to be the guy in Oliveira who's losing this fight until you win. I love the minute winning ability of Makhachev. I think his pace and pressure will eventually break Oliveira. And I'm predicting a late finish for Makhachev, probably due to ground and pound somewhere later down the stretch. Possibly a decision. That's a little bit harder to predict because Oliveira has only been to 4 decisions, between like 40-some fights. So that's a bit of a bold one. But, the Makhachev 4-5 decision prop, probably not even going to be juicy enough for me to play, honestly. I like the over 1.5 rounds here at like minus 150. Possibly the under 3.5 rounds, or the fight doesn't start round 4. Could be enticing, somewhere around like that minus 200, minus 245 range. So maybe the time props I'll play. I haven't played any yet, but I'm hopping off the Oliveira side. I don't want to get in front of either guy here. I hate not having action on a money line here, but Makhachev is good, and I really do think he is going to, in Fight Island with his, he's got one of the best coaches you could possibly have, his former training partner, Khabib. I think all of these things are going to play dividends in a close fight, and I just really think he's going to be winning the minutes here, and I don't think that submission from Oliveira will ever come in this fight. So give me Makhachev in this fight, taking the favorite here, even though it feels like I am taking the underdog in this fight. Oliveira has been good to me for a long time, but time for me to just back off of this one and see what happens. So give me Makhachev by a late finish. Okay, there you have it, you guys. All 14 fights broken down for UFC 280, Oliveira versus Makhachev. Such a fun card with so many big names, and as such, there will be a lot of differing opinions and strong ones on this card. So hit me in the comments if you agree or disagree with my picks. I always love to hear it. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. We're zooming towards 500 subscribers, and I appreciate each and every one of you. My only bets on this card so far are the money lines of Borralho, Zubaira Tukhugov, and Mateusz Gamrot. I'll be adding plenty more, and I'll release all of those on my best bets and props video later in the week. But on Wednesday night, I will be having a very special guest. Bert MMA is scheduled to come and break down this fight with me from a props perspective, just talking about our betting strategies for the card. So it should be a lot of fun, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Cheers.